All right, everyone, it is 7 o'clock. So we can call the meeting to order. I'd like to welcome my fellow commissioners, those watching at home, and the folks waiting to testify to the City of Hartford Charter Revision Commission's first public hearing. And I'd ask that David Grant proceed with the roll call. David.
Hello, good afternoon or good evening, commissioners. 1 second here. Okay, when I call your name, just please say here. James Wolfe.
Here.
John Gale. Kathleen Kowalshin.
Here.
Bruce Rubenstein.
Here and conscious.
Raul de Jesus.
Here.
Eon Smith.
Here.
Vicki Gallen Clark.
Here.
Melvin Medina. Arunan Arulopoulos. Kamora Harrington.
Here.
Kenneth Kennedy.
Here.
Yadira Rivera.
Here.
Steve Bonafonte.
Here.
And Alexander Aponte.
Okay, thank you, David. And without objection, I'd like to postpone the approval of the minutes from our April 22nd meeting until our next meeting. Seeing no objection.
No objection.
Okay. We can move on to the public hearing portion of this evening's meeting. Before we begin, I'd like to note that we're required by state statute to hold a public hearing before engaging in any substantive work as a commission. That said, I want to be clear that this will not be the last opportunity for the public to address the commission. We intend to provide opportunities for public comment at least once a month at the beginning of our meetings. Additionally, if a member of the public would like to submit written comments or ideas, they can email them to David Grant, and upon receipt, he will circulate those comments to the entire commission. Also, there will be a public hearing structured much like this one following the release of the commission's draft recommendations next year. With regards to tonight's public hearing, the public hearing will be conducted in accordance with the following procedures. Each person wishing to address the commission shall, upon recognition by the chair, provide their name, address, and if they represent a group, they must state for the record the name and address of said group or organizations, and they shall limit the remarks to 5 minutes. All remarks shall be addressed to the commission as a body and not to any individual member. Any person making personal, impertinent, or slanderous remarks or who becomes boisterous while addressing the commission may be barred by the chair from further participation at this hearing unless permission to remain is granted by a 2/3 vote of the commission members present and voting. And during the public hearing, there shall be no debate by the commission, although questions may be asked by commissioners to members of the public through the chair. And with that, we will proceed with our first speaker. And I believe our first speaker on the list is Stan McCauley. Stan, are you there?
Dan, go ahead and unmute.
Okay, Stan, I see your name. Looks like you're unmuted. You want to try to say something? David, should we try to come back to Stan?
Yeah, we can go ahead and move on to Leslie.
All right. Stan, we will come back to you and try again after Leslie Hammond. Leslie?
Yep, I'm here. Leslie Hammond, 1 Linden Place. Thank you all for your service and for doing this volunteer work. It's really, really important. I've been going to city council meetings for the last 5 years, pretty much every month. And I feel that we really need dramatic change in this city. And I hope you guys are the ones to do it. I'm not sure about the strong mayor or not a strong mayor. I think the strong mayor is okay, but we need a much stronger city council. And I've been thinking about how can we do that? I think, first of all, we should have representation from the assembly districts, which there's 6 of, possibly 2 from each. I don't know. That's something I still am thinking about, but definitely have representation for this assembly district so people feel more empowered. Keep in mind, only 7,000 people out of 123,000 people in our city. Not all voters, I understand that, but that's all who voted for the mayor. So we need a lot more engagement with city council, and I'm thinking maybe we have to pay them. Why do we pay our council aides $50,000 and our city council people $15,000? So maybe they need to be full-time people and pay them like $60,000, $65,000. I don't know how we're going to do that. That's you guys to figure out, but I really think it's something to consider, and then have a professional staff for the council aides. You know, right now with every council person picking somebody, we saw with the sexual harassment case with Mr. Clark that, you know, we didn't even know who the aides worked for. Did they work for the council person or the president or the town clerk? And that's ridiculous. So I really feel like we need a change with the council aides along with the council. I don't know how much time I have. I know I only have 5 minutes. The other thing I'm thinking about are commissions. I think
2 more minutes.
Okay,
3 more minutes. Sorry.
The working commissions could be really awesome. There's a couple of them that are good, but the mayor has taken a long time to appoint people. They tend to be the usual people. Nothing against the DTC, but you know, we could use some new people on some of these commissions. And I looked on the charter and I couldn't believe how many great commissions there are. There's one on homeless, housing, criminal justice, workplace rights, FOI. I mean, there's a commission for FOI. So let's figure out how we can, whoever the mayor is, how we can make these commissions happen. Do the council have to pick people? How can we actually make things happen? We can't be dependent on who the mayor is and whether he wants transparency and input, which this particular mayor, I don't think is too big on that. So my big thing is transparency, 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 and voter empowerment. And how can we figure that out to make the city much more alive and thriving? So was that 5 minutes? I don't want to overtake time.
Got 2 more minutes if you'd like.
Oh, I do. Wow. Okay. So back to transparency, one of the things I go back and forth with is, you know, HPA-TV has been doing the council meetings. Nobody really knows about it. How do we get the word out? You know, a lot of the council people don't like to use social media except a couple of them. And, you know, the town council supposedly posts meetings. Like what's that about? Do they put it up on their bulletin board? So I don't know if that's something in the charter, but there's got to be a way to make sure that more information gets out to the public. And so I didn't see it in the charter from what I was reading. I was mainly focused on, you know, the whole thing with council and the commissions. And I think if the commissions are alive and thriving, you know, and a variety of people, not the same people. We have some people that are on like 2 or 3 commissions. That's like ridiculous. So I think that could really make a big difference to get the word out to the rest of the city. So thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Hammond. We appreciate it. Up next, do we want to try Stan again? No, let's try.
I brought him up. We'll see if he's
Okay.
good now.
Stan, are you there? Okay, why don't we try Stan again at the end of the public comment portion, and let's go with the next speaker in line, which is Naya McGlamory. Naya?
Good evening. My name is Naya McGlamory. I live on 5 Regent Street. So yeah, my name is Naya McGlamory. I'm a 16-year-old lifelong Hartford resident. My first concern about the charter revision is transparency and access for residents throughout the revision process. I'm not going to sit here and lie to you. In my experience, Hartford is not good at doing transparency. I could sit here forever and talk about Dunkin' Donuts Stadium or Hartford schools or the Hartford Police Department, but I'm not going to sit here and list every single transparency issue. But in the wake of the COVID-19 pandemic, the rise of awareness of systemic white supremacy, police brutality, et cetera, it's important now more than ever that the city shows its residents that it works not only in our best interest, but with us. You can tell us that the residents are your number one priority until the end of time, but we need to see that happening. There needs to be community information sessions about what the charter is and the charter revision. And this needs to be in the form of a conversation. We need to not feel as if we are here and if we are down here and you are all above us deciding our fate. We have to be on the same level. A conversation like normal humans. We must be able to ask questions and express our concerns directly to commissioners face to face, whether that be on Zoom or not, in a forum where we can have immediate and honest responses. And it should be like it is now, live streamed and recorded and posted on YouTube and other platforms for later access. This should also occur on a regular basis so that residents can always be up to date on the process. My second concern is a question, not a concern. How can residents support the commission in this work? As I said before, I think it's really important that we are all on the same level in this. Finally, for the charter itself, there are a few main changes I as a resident would like to see. The first is voting age. As I said, I'm 16. I believe the voting age should be lowered for city elections to 16 because people my age are heavily affected by the decisions the city makes. Almost every department deals with or affects youth in some way, and we should be able to have a say in that. Secondly, I believe that the city needs to get rid of the strong mayor and should give that power largely back to the city manager. We need more checks and balances. One person should not hold as much power as Luke Bronin currently does. For example, as far as I'm aware, the Board of Education is currently comprised of 4 elected board members and 5 appointed by the mayor, one of which could be the mayor. That I have some significant concerns with that. It creates a power differential where the elected members who are who should be more accurately reflecting the will of the people, and it puts them in a minoritized and disempowered position. I would recommend that the Board of Ed be fully comprised of elected members, and I would propose that there be 1 elected member per zone. The remaining seats could be at-large seats open to any city resident, but all seats should be elected and not appointed. These seats should ideally be filled by parents and guardians of school-aged children in our district. And while I'm on the topic of the board, the student board member should stop being a ceremonial position and should hold some sort of real power. There also needs to be residency requirement for department heads, Board of Ed members, and any other relevant city officials, including and especially police. These officials should be required to live in Hartford for no less than 6 months before they are hired. Personally, I think that it should be a longer amount of time if it is an elected position. No one should be allowed to come into our city for 6 months just to use us as a pawn for an acceleration in their political career. The people of Hartford deserve better than that. People who are already residents should also be given preference for these positions over those who have not yet been residents for 6 months. Finally, the charter needs to include police oversight. This must include, but not be limited to, a mandated civilian police review board with no mayoral appointees and no training that may alter the board members' opinions so that they are effectively no longer civilians. I thank you all for your time.
Thank you very much, Ms. McLamory. Up next, we have
a question for the chair. Are we doing questions at the end, or can we ask questions as the speakers complete their statements?
You can ask a question through the chair. Go ahead, Commissioner Medina.
Through the chair, thank you so much, Naya, for your comments. You brought up a lot of things that I'm really interested in learning more about from you. The one primary one, as it relates to voting for younger people 16 and up, and related to that, getting better input from city residents to ensure that this is a collaborative process and really a process of the people. What suggestions do you have for us to hear from more youth, people 16 and above, to ensure that we're getting that input as eloquently as you stated it, but others as well. Do you have any thoughts or ideas about how we can hear from more younger folks as we do this process throughout the year?
Ms. McClavery?
Yeah, well, first of all, it's not myth. I'm non-binary. And that's also another thing. Maybe there should be mandated LGBT training for anyone who works for the city. On your question, for youth, I think one thing might be to change the name of Parks and Rec back, because people do not want to bring their kids somewhere that sounds like DCF, the place that takes away their kids. So that might be one way where you can get connected with kids more. In general, I think, as I said, we all need to be on the same level. This power differential and hierarchical system is not beneficial for the people of Hartford. And I feel like there's a lot of city officials acting like they're high and mighty and that we are somehow less than. So I think an overall attitude change, and also, as I said, the name change back to Parks and Rec.
Commissioner Medina, any further questions?
No, that was super helpful, and definitely looking forward to figuring out a way we can work with the speaker to ensure that we get more young people to get to hear from them. So any ideas as folks think about it, I think that would be ideal. Even if we can find ourselves, maybe it's doing an in-person meeting at the various parks, or I mean, hell, I'm down for camping out on a basketball court and figuring out what folks have to think about the Charter Commission stuff. So thank you.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Commissioner Rubenstein.
I have a question for the last speaker and an observation. I totally agree with lowering the voting age, though I think it's more a federal and state fix and not something local. If it was, I certainly would be for it. My question, though, has to do with the police. I'm asking the last speaker what the idea of elected police commissioners, is that something that might be acceptable?
Naya?
Elected, like, or you mean versus appointed?
Yes, I mean elected by citizens in the city, like they
Yes,
have in many other cities.
Yeah, yes, I don't think that any one person should have the power to appoint people, especially not someone in the government who works on behalf of the police department or works mutually with the police department, should have the power to appoint the people holding them accountable. But I also think that there needs to, and I don't have all the answers. Again, I'm 16, but I don't think that it should be like a kind of thing where you get to campaign for this and it's like, it can't be politicians. It can't just be more politicians.
Right. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Commissioner Rubenstein. Any other questions? Seeing none, thank you, Naya. Up next, we have Thurman Saunders. David, is Thurman here?
No, I don't see Thurman on.
Okay, up next we have Gannon Long.
Hi, you guys hear me okay?
Yes, thank you, Gannon. Your time starts now.
Great, thank you so much. My name's Gannon Long. I live at 114 Warrenton Avenue. And I have lived in a few different addresses over the years in the city, but that was my first and probably the last one. I'm representing myself, and I really just first want to thank everybody on the panel and certainly the speakers and the citizens, everybody who's here tonight. But I know for the commissioners, this is a huge commitment. It's a lot of people's hopes and dreams and what we all want for the city that we care so much about. We have different, views, and it means different things to us, but I really thank you for putting that work in and for making the effort to, continue listening to folks as you've described, listening to people's ideas of how to get their input and make a better city for all of us. So I thank you for taking that seriously. And I guess we want to think about what we want the city to look like, how we want it to operate, for us. And I think, a lot of us, I don't know all of you, I know a few of you, and I've certainly know a lot of you by your work over the years. But we have to think about what type of city we want, how we want to interact with our government, what we should expect from our government. And I think we can look at a lot of things right now. People have mentioned accountability, they've mentioned transparency. I think representation is another word that we should be thinking about. But what are we lacking from, what do we see, what's the logical conclusion of the worst incentive structure we can have? And how do we change that dynamic? And a lot of it really comes down to civic engagement. I'm certainly not a person like all of you who thinks voting is the be all and end all of civic engagement, but voting is important. And we have a current system with the strong mayor where his first election, he won with about 11 to 12,000 votes, and the second election with about 7,000. And the city has about 120 plus thousand people. So first, those are really low numbers of participation. And second, why did they go down in the last 4 years? And so I think that speaks to just how much people don't feel like they can engage with their government. They're not even engaging in the minimal way of voting for the mayor. And there's a lot of reasons for that, but some of it does come down to the political structure of the city. And, I would encourage us to really reshift that balance. I'm not opposed to a strong mayor system because I think efficiency is important. I think that's the leader, and I think we should try to have some consensus building. I think we should incentivize collaboration, but we can't, I think that the city council needs to have a lot more power. And so thank you, Mr. Wolf. So I think we want to think about how do we shift that balance of power? One thing is, the city council, as Leslie said, I think it should be considered a full-time job. I think we need to pay people to do that. I don't think we should depend on independently wealthy people to find the time as their third or fourth priority to be. And I'm not saying that this is the case for any city council member. I know that they work hard. I know it's a difficult job. But we need to really have people who can do that full time. And we need to have folks that represent folks from different neighborhoods in the city. I don't want us to be in the New Haven model of older people, which is way too many, but I think somewhere between 9 and 20 city councilors is probably a reasonable number, more than 9, probably fewer than 20. And I think you should have neighborhood representation. I mean, if you all think about it, I'm sitting in front of my map right now, you can't see me, but we have 6 assembly districts, and you could have a city councilor for each one. They could work with the state rep, right? I mean, think about the stability and the collaboration that could entail. So I would encourage that. Also think you need a more of a professional staff for the city council, including a policy staff who is experts at things and not just political appointees, as well as constituent service. That is a job in a city of 120,000 people with the poverty rate that Hartford has, and the needs and the human needs and trauma that we have. We need good constituent service, and we need clear metrics about what that means. We need accountability for doing it. The last thing I would say, and before I finish, I associate myself with everything Naima Glamry said about education, 16-year-olds voting in city elections, 100% agree. Absolutely agree with the 100% elected city board. It should not be the mayor's appointees. You also might want to think about paying the Board of Education something for their time. That's not an easy job.
That's 5 minutes, Gannon, if you could please summarize.
Absolutely. Last thing is police are a mess, and we'll talk about that next month. But really hope you can dismantle that system the best that you can, because it's a disaster in Hartford right now. Thank you all again a lot for being there and for the time to speak to tonight.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Commissioner Rubenstein.
I have a question for Gannon.
Please proceed.
Thank you. Hi, Gannon. As you know, the Board of Ed has 5 appointed members by the mayor and 4 elected. There are many people in the city that want to return like it was before the strong mayor, where all 9 were elected. What are your thoughts about that?
I think that the Board of Education should have 9 elected people. I think, I think Naya's point about elected folks and that being a political game or running campaigns, I understand there's concerns around that. And so maybe there's ways to, maybe you can do ranked choice, or maybe there's sort of less adversarial ways to structure how those folks get chosen. But I think having the mayor appoint them all on his own. I mean, if you look at a lot of, it's the Board of Education, a lot of those people are on that board, and they're also on a different board. Like they're also on maybe a different city commission, or they're also on a different organizations board or some. I mean, there's just a lot of overlap. And so I think you need a process that promotes more diversity and better representation, and especially of people who are directly involved with the actual public school system that the Board of Ed oversees, including parents and hopefully, you know, some Hartford resident teachers as well.
I have a follow-up. What do you think about the idea of taking politics out of the Board of Education races by mandating just a permit fee that anybody could run by paying a permit fee, keeping in mind though that there is the statute that leavens representation for third minority representation. Would that be something that you think might be feasible?
That, you know what, you know, there are other folks who are better experts at election law than I am, for sure. But I think that is something that could work. I think there's probably a lot of different ways, and it certainly could be one of them. But yeah, I absolutely agree. Taking the politics out of it to the. I mean, to some degree, it's okay. Politics is people's incentive to run. I get it, but you don't want the education system to be politicized in the way that it has been over the years.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Rubenstein. Commissioner Medina.
Thank you, and thank you, Gannon, for your thoughts. One question I had, because it's come up before, and I don't mean to present this as a false choice, but when thinking about both the opportunity to expand the city council and thinking about a full-time city council, do you gravitate towards a smaller council that is full-time versus a bigger council that financially makes it harder to run full-time because there's a lot more people? Any thoughts on that?
One thing, you know, and I don't know how much of this is policy and how much of this is charter, but I do notice that there are a lot of director positions in the mayor's office that seem to be funded pretty freely. So you may want to have a little more oversight as to how many. I mean, literally, I don't know if you all have looked at this. You probably have. You're very smart. You know, the development services office has like a director, and then there's a deputy director, and then there's several other department directors, and then there's even within that. I mean, it's just the layers of the, you know, the mayor, and then the chief of operations, and then the chief of staff, and then the director of I mean, the number of layers between, you know, Joe Citizen and the mayor is just too much. And so I think if, you know, for me, I would much rather fund somebody who lives in my neighborhood to have a good job. Nobody's getting rich. I'm not saying that it should be, you know, in Boston, city councilors are full-time. They get $99,000 a year. We don't have the same median income as Boston. I don't think we need to do that. But I will note it's a very well-functioning city in a lot of ways. And that's not an accident, that's intentional. So I don't think you necessarily need to have a small, I understand what you're saying about the cost, but if you have 12 people on the city council, that's only 3 more. And that could be funded, you know, you guys, this may not be your guys' job, but that could be funded by cutting the police budget by $5 million. You know, that could be cut by cutting whatever number of ex-director jobs in the mayor's office, you know. So I think there's ways to do the funding. I think the bottom line in the next 20 years is to just get the vision right and, you know, really create a structure that's going to make people do the best thing for the city and work for the city, not just work for political favors or their own political advancement.
I appreciate that. Those were my questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Medina. Anyone else? Seeing none, thank you, Gannon. All right, next up we have Naisha McCauley. Naisha, I apologize for skipping you. I'll give you a moment to come on here, and then I'll let you know when I start the clock.
Hello, can you hear me?
Oh, yep.
Okay. Clock started?
Yes.
All right. Good evening, everyone. Naisha McCauley, 77 Wadsworth Street, and I am representing myself. I'm a resident of the city, lifelong resident of the city. And I wanted to briefly mention some organizational affiliation, not because I'm representing that organization, because it is the foundation of my comment. And I'm here to speak specifically around the Board of Education. I spent the last 6, 7, 8 years working for an organization called Achieve Hartford. And we did education advocacy. Our mission was to promote high quality education for Hartford students. And so in that role, we examined all kinds of policy. We examined all kinds of reform. We examined different models. So I just mentioned that to also launch into what I'm here in favor of, the hybrid system that we currently have. I know there's a narrative that suggests appointed board members is not a democratic way in which to govern education. And I would say we need to reframe that narrative, because the mayor, as it exists right now, as a strong mayor, appointing those board members is democratic in that we elect the mayor. You know, it's not as though we don't have a say in the direction in which the mayor is then going to appoint. Like we have all the say because we are electing our mayor, and then the mayor has the option to then choose who in aligned with a vision would then serve as in those appointed seats. So what I'm putting forward is a vision of what could be, of a model of how it could work, not to judge the system based upon what it looks like right now. But when you have a strong mayor who has a vision for success and has a vision for the city, you have the ability then to coordinate a lot of your resources in a much more efficient and effective way. So in an ideal scenario, this vision is well coordinated. And so you have the resources, not only of the mayor's office, but through the appointment, you have the coordination of those resources. Things are not siloed because you are carrying out a vision. And so it could work this way. And I know it doesn't currently look like this, but having Kim Oliver sit on the board as also the director of Parks and Recs provides you a beautiful opportunity for coordination. This is because if you imagine how parents walk through and navigate the city, parents don't silo themselves between like, well, that's the Parks and Recs department and this is the school system. It actually, all of these systems touch and reach families and children. And if you had this alignment and coordination, you actually can do something quite special. So I'm really glad that Commissioner Wolf, you stated at the beginning that there will be more opportunities to talk about this, because I have much more to say as to why the hybrid system actually can work very well in alignment with a strong mayor form of government. And so it can work. And I would love another opportunity to give you more, not only research and data and models of where the system actually it's not a less democratic system. It's actually even more democratic. And we can talk about civic engagement and the role of board members and all of that in my next go round, because I know I'm out of time. But thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you, Naisha. That was right on 5 minutes. Very well done. And I just want to, to note that, if you have any data or anything else, that articles, things that you'd like to share with the commission, please do send those over to David Grant. He will send them around. And I would encourage anyone else watching at home or any of the other presenters tonight to send over anything that they would like us to see. Any questions?
Appreciate that.
Seeing none, thank you, Naisha.
Thank you.
Up next, we have Stan McCauley.
Hello, commissioners. Can you hear me?
Yes, hold on one moment while I restart the clock. We're good to go. Thank you, Stan.
Okay, sorry for the technical problems. My name is James Stanley McCauley, and I live at 77 Wadsworth Street. I wear many hats, but tonight I'm representing myself as a constituent of the city of Hartford. I wanted to talk about 5 points that I think might be helpful as we rethink how our charter is structured. Generally speaking, you have opposition parties that would kind of help keep things in check. But the fact of the matter is Hartford is a one-party town. But I think the system is not designed specifically for parties, but rather for a balance of power through the branches. And so I'd like to suggest that we should keep the strong mayor, because I don't think the problem is the mayor. I think the problem is there's a lack of accountability and a lack of oversight to the office and of the executive. So I think that we should keep the strong mayor, but we should change how the city council is elected. And so I'm suggesting that we have staggered elections. We have the presidential cycle, we have the state election cycle, and we have the municipal cycle. And I'm suggesting that the mayor is elected during the presidential cycle and that the city council is elected during the state election cycle as well as the municipal election cycle, thus severing the coattails from the mayor. The problem is more that the city council is not our council, it's the mayor's council. And that's by default because they run as a slate. And as a slate, the mayor brings them in. Literally, they owe their debt of office to the mayor and his financial resources, whoever he may be, whatever party he is. So I think that we should have a two-tiered city council that would be hybrid. You'd have council people at large, like 4 council people that would represent the entire city, and they would serve 4-year terms. And then you'd have district council people who would represent districts within the city, thus giving certain districts around the city a voice, and people who would contend for the needs of those districts, and they would serve 2-year terms. It would also give the opportunity for 2-year terms to move toward a 4-year term, and then the 4-year term people to run for mayor. So we kind of be building a little bench for our system. As such, they would be more prone to holding the executive branch. Thank you. They'd be more prone to holding the executive branch in check because they are not beholden to the executive branch. They ran on their own, they were elected on their own, and they will contend for the constituents that put them into office. So we'd have at-large representation serving for a 4-year term, and we'd have a district representation serving for 2-year terms. I'd also suggest that the mayor continues to appoint people to the Board of Ed, but he would appoint 3 people to the Board of Education, and 6 would be elected. And in terms of police accountability, I believe that the police chief should be a direct report to the mayor and to the mayor only. I do not think that he should be able to delegate those that reporting to other members of his staff. I think it should be a direct report. The people elect the mayor. The mayor has a better opportunity to hold the police chief accountable because he is accountable to the constituents. And so I think that the real problem in Hartford is not so much that we have a strong mayor, but that we have a mayor that brings in a council that is too subservient to his will. And that ends my remarks.
Thank you, Stan. Any questions?
I have one.
Commissioner Rubenstein, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Hi, Stan.
Hello, Mr. Rubenstein, Mr. Chair.
My question is, New Haven has a public financed election for mayor. Is that something you think could be feasible for Hartford? A public financed election for mayor and for council people?
Oddly enough, I think if the public financing helped elect council people, that would be helpful. As long as the election cycle happens at the same time as the mayor, the way the party is structured, the way you have to get onto the slate, people vote for a slate. They don't generally vote for individuals on the slate. They vote for the whole slate. So the slate gets elected. And I don't think there's anything nefarious. It's just a matter of human nature and how you got where you got and what you need. And, you know, the art of deal making that lends itself to, the chief executive having the kind of power that keeps council people not doing their job of holding him accountable. So I think just because it's paid for by citizens at large doesn't change the mechanics of it in my mind.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Commissioner Rubenstein. Commissioner Medina, you have the floor.
Thank you, Stan, for your thoughts. It's very helpful. A clarifying question I had is a mayor running in a presidential election and then city council elections during statewide gubernatorial elections. Is that what you were thinking?
Yeah, the mayor would run at the same time as the president. Your at-large would run at the same time, as I guess your senators and state representatives. And then the city council that would be representative of the districts would run in the same year as your Board of Education people. That way you get a better turnout for the Board of Ed, which in my mind runs half of the city's budget and is probably touching the biggest part of government that we have, which is our schools and the most important citizens we have, which are our children. Yet we get very low turnout.
Got it. So for the at-large district reps every 2 years, you wouldn't want it cycled in a way where every other 2 years they're linked up with the mayoral race. You want them kind of like on an odd year on their own.
Yes. The
at
no time would the city council people be at the same time as the mayor.
Got it. Those are my.
Thank you, Commissioner Medina. Any other questions? Seeing none, thank you, Stan.
Thank you for your time and your service.
Up next, we have Paul Bash, who is now with us. I'll give Paul a moment. Paul, it looks like you're on mute. Here you go.
Hello.
Hi, Paul. Your 5 minutes is starting right now. Could you introduce yourself and offer up your address?
My name is Paul Bash, and I live in Hartford at 31 Woodland Street. I'm representing myself. I really thank the commission, and it's been a great hearing. And I'm very happy that most people have focused on systemic changes, because I think that's what we need. It's not a question of who the mayor is or who the DTC chair is, who the council is. So the 4 issues I want to briefly discuss I do believe it very important that our council, at least the majority of council, be elected by district. You know, I don't believe what's commonly done is always right, but I think if you look through most cities in this country with a strong mayor, you will find that all, or at least the majority of the council, is elected by district to bring some balance, with the mayor representing political power in the city as a whole and the council representing the districts. I've been involved at Hartford for a long time, and I can just tell you from experience that I've only known 3 instances in which council not endorsed by the Democratic Town Committee won, and 2 of the 3 were with George Athenson and Kerry Perry, where incumbent mayors were dumped by the Democratic Party, and then they and their whole slate got elected. The 3rd instance was in '93, a weird election in which, at the end of the day, there was no endorsed slate on the ballot for either mayor or council. But otherwise, it's pretty typical. On the other hand, we've had a number of instances in our state rep elections where not endorsed candidates have won because of the ability to run in a smaller district. So if you really want to represent neighborhoods, and I've been there, been on the Democratic Town Committee, if you want to, it's not perfect, but turn it into less than a political game, then you need to go majority districts. As far as the Board of Education, I prefer, again, a return, as other people have said, to a fully elected board, although I think that at least majority elected board is if that's all that can be done, is a step in a good direction. I also have a concern about bond issues. Although the present charter sounds pretty transparent and democratic about getting a petition to put a bond issue on the ballot for capital expenditure, hasn't happened since the charter was adopted in 2003. And I think that rather than require a citizen initiative, I don't know what the sum is. It should be perhaps the cost of a school, whatever that is, but that item should go to an automatic bond referendum, as it was prior to the present charter in 2003. Obviously, the amount there was set in the 40s and was ridiculously low. I think it was $250,000. The 4th issue, and I am a retired city employee, presently city employees have a speaking but not voting representative on the pension commission. I don't think anyone would tolerate that. Yeah, I don't think anyone would tolerate that if that was an organization you belong to or stock you hold. I think that the representative should have a vote, and I think that retirees should be also able to join that vote. That's all I have to say, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Paul. Do we have any questions for Paul?
I do.
Commissioner Rubenstein, you have the floor.
Thank you. Sorry to take so many questions here, but I'm a Gabby lawyer. Hi, Paul.
Hi, Bruce. How are you?
Good, thank you. I have a couple of questions. One has to do with the Board of Education. As you know, we had all 9 electable Board of Ed members 20 some odd years ago, and
Correct.
changed in the strong mayor charter. And we remember, I'm sure you remember, the lessons of Selma and other places in the South about the right to vote. And you know
Right.
that the change of the strong mayor form of government here took away the right to vote for 5 members of the Board of Ed. So you would be in favor of having a return to all 9?
Preferably all 9, yes. If that wasn't politically feasible, at least like Stan maybe suggested 6-3, but preferably all 9.
My next quick question is, West Hartford has a referendum ability for the budget, so that the citizens would have a say if they took out petitions and got a certain percentage of electors to sign the petitions. Would that be something that you think might be feasible for Hartford?
I'm against that, Bruce, and let me tell you why. I'm in favor of citizens having a vote on, let's say, should there be a new XYZ school, something quite specific. But I've seen the examples in Windsor and in West Hartford in years past where the citizen can vote against the budget without proposing any rational alternatives. And I consider that to be an irresponsible vote. That's my opinion, rather than people having a right to vote on a specific project.
Fair enough. Thank you.
Thank you, Bruce.
Thank you, Commissioner Rubenstein. Any other questions? Seeing none, thank you, Paul.
Thank you very much.
Up next, we have Ann Goshdigian.
Hi, can you hear me?
Ann, welcome. I will start your 5 minutes now.
Hi, my name is Ann Goshdigian. I live at 80 Weathersfield Avenue, a nearly lifelong Hartford resident since 1950. I am here representing myself today. And a lot of what I would like to say has been said in a different way. I want to bring up three things that all relate to appointed as opposed to posted city positions. And I will start with the Board of Education. I've been thinking about this for years now. And I say that no mayor should have the power to appoint the voting majority of the Board of Education. The majority, at the very least, must be elected, and I would certainly not be averse to a fully elected Board of Education, but this cannot continue on the way it is. We've had a very long string for the last 15 years of several superintendents of schools who are appointed by the council. However, what we have here, we have a great problem. The superintendent of schools are the highest paid employees of the city of Hartford, more than double what the mayor makes. But unfortunately, our schools are still not providing Hartford school children with the quality and comprehensive education that they need. I speak as someone who attended public schools in Hartford, and I can tell you, for those who weren't around then, they were probably one of the most highly regarded school systems in the United States. Quality education. To get a diploma from one of the public high schools in Hartford, you had to have the equivalent of knowledge that one would need for a BA today, and I am not exaggerating. I want Hartford school children to have the opportunity to be all that they can be, not just, study to the test and be pushed out with really no good preparation for higher education. Many of them do go on to college at the urging of the school system and drop out very quickly after because they realize they do not have the skills needed to move into higher education. This has to stop, and having educated children is really one of the keys to this city's survival. And also, if we want families to make Hartford their home, we must have a good school system. And I think an elected Board of Education would make a difference, because you would want people on there who are truly devoted to that. Next, I want to go into appointed positions in city government, and specifically council assistants. With 9 council assistants, potentially 9, or 1 per councilor, counting benefits, paid holidays, and salary, it's costing the city a good $750,000 a year. These jobs should be filled through competitive hiring practices. They are pure pork, pure gravy. They are jobs that are handed to people. They do not go through the human resources department. It's basically, you want this job, you've got this job. And there is very little oversight. I propose that we have 3 council assistants, 2 to serve the majority party, and 1 to serve the minority, or as we are now, minority parties. That is a sufficient number. Let me just say that West Hartford, and I have a whole list, but I'm going to go to West Hartford. West Hartford has a city council that serves voluntarily without pay, and they have 1 assistant for the entire council. 1 assistant handles the work, And as you know, if you know anything about West Hartford, you know that they have very, very engaged citizenry and probably keep the town council extremely busy and that one assistant. Hartford is being wasteful by assigning one assistant to each counselor. It's completely unnecessary. They should be hired on the basis of their resume, their experience, their skills, and prove that they are the right person for the job, and it should go through the Human Resources Department. I am in favor of eliminating appointing council assistants. The last
And
thing I'd like to say—
5 minutes, if you please summarize.
Yes. As far as safety goes, I am fully in favor of an elected police commissioner. The mayor has the power to appoint the chief of police. We've had a lot of problems with that. We've had 4 different chiefs in the past 5 years. And I believe that a commissioner above the level of chief of police would be an excellent idea for the city of Hartford, which has experienced so many problems within the police department under the current chief system. And that's what I have to say. And I thank you all. I had the pleasure of meeting many of you in the past or knowing you for a long time. The ones I haven't, it's very, very nice to meet you now. And I'm so glad you're all here. Thank you.
Thank you very much for coming out, Ann. Any questions?
I do. I have a question, Chairman.
Hi, Vicki.
Let's go to Commissioner Gallon Clark first, followed by Commissioner Medina. Commissioner Gallon Clark, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chairman Wolf. And I have a question for you. You're talking about something near and dear to my heart, and that's quality education. Would you just elaborate a little bit more on your insights as to what's contributing to a lack of quality education?
I'm so glad you asked me that, Vicki. This is something I think about frequently. I can only base it, my children did not go to school, well, only in a couple of elementary grades in Hartford, and we were living in another town for most of their years of education. So I can base it on the Hartford public school system as it was. One thing is that every child is not academically inclined. Why do they go to school? Because we used to offer extracurricular things in the school. I'm not just talking about rec departments at night when they were all open. I'm talking about clubs. I'm talking about musical organizations. I'm talking about school newspapers. I am talking about anything that rings a bell with a kid and makes them want to go to school, because you may hate biology, but you love being in the band. And you know you want to stay in the band and you want to be with other kids who are like-minded and doing the same thing. It is sad to say just about all of that is gone from the Hartford school system now. Why can't these high schools have newspapers? Why can't they have literary magazines that come out quarterly? Why can they not have chess clubs? Why can they not have debate clubs, drama, music, dance, art shows? More performance opportunities that would bring parents into schools to see exhibits or performances and engage them more too. That is one of the main things that comes to me. These were the things that gave them a more well-rounded education than just going into school and reading or doing a worksheet and then taking a test. They need more. They need it to develop themselves into whole persons and perhaps even decide what they want to do with their lives beyond high school and even beyond college. So that's one of the major things. I also think, and I feel very strongly, that teachers, a lot of teachers in Hartford have been hamstrung. They are not allowed to do things, and I'm not talking about corporal punishment. They are not allowed to have any sort of discipline in their classrooms. If they have problems and say a child is swearing at a teacher or throwing something, disrupting the class, they send them to the principal. The kid's right back in the classroom a half hour later. I'm not saying punish the children. I'm saying let teachers teach. Let them not be babysitters and disciplinarians. Allow them the freedom to have a classroom that is functional, and is not disruptive all the time. I'm saying let kids talk, have conversations, but if some want to make trouble, the teacher needs to not be clamped down on by the administration and say, no, just leave them alone. Just leave them alone. Don't do anything about it. Just, let them keep going. And I don't believe in that. Again, I hope I don't sound too hard or cold by saying that, but I feel it's important, and I feel kids need that kind of structure too. They need freedom, they need creativity, but they also need structure. And
thank you for that, Ann.
yeah.
Thank you so much.
Certainly. And thank you, Vicki. And Mr. Medina, Melvin? No? Okay.
That wasn't me that spoke. I think it was someone else.
Oh, okay.
Is there someone else that had a question? Another commissioner?
I did.
Commissioner
Bruce
Rubenstein, you have the floor.
Oh, okay. Hi, Ann.
Hi.
You may remember that about 15 years ago, Mayor Perez appointed himself to be on the Board of Ed, and eventually became the chair of the Board of Ed and also mayor. Do you think that the charter should be changed to disallow a mayor to appoint himself or herself on the Board of Ed?
I do. That's not a hard question. Yes, I do believe that the mayor, unless that mayor is involved in the education process in some way, either by being part of it or having a child in the school system where there might be some more validity to that, I don't believe a mayor necessarily is an asset to a Board of Education.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any further questions for Ann?
Hi, Steve Mednick.
Attorney Mednick.
Attorney Steve Mednick. I'm sorry. I see the Addy there. Yes. I can't hear you, Steve. Can't
Normally,
hear.
yeah,
Oh.
I'm back. Normally,
Hi.
I don't ask questions, Mr. Chairman, during this kind of program, but Ms. Gashdigian
Please call me Ann.
Ann had a very interesting question or point that she made about an elected police commissioner. Is that, you said, would that be an executive that's elected by the people to run the police department? I've never heard that concept unless I heard you wrong.
Did you ever watch Batman when you were growing up?
That's exactly what I was thinking was Batman. But and New York has police commissioners as well. They're not elected. But that's the concept you're laying out.
I think an elected one who has to come to the table running for election with the qualifications that can be vetted, that the people would know about. I don't want to see some guy just, walking in off the street and say, hi, I want to run for police commissioner. Obviously, it has to be someone with the credentials, with the professionalism, and with the good record to do it. Yeah, I don't have a problem with that, because the chief of police is an appointee. And apparently the ability to do that is not going to be taken from the mayor. And as long as the mayor still has the right to appoint a chief of police, I think some of these people I'm looking at right now will agree with me that currently, for the last couple of years, that hasn't really worked out too well for the city of Hartford. And I would think a commissioner might have a little more gravitas, shall we say, than a chief of police. And yeah, I'm all for it. I'm all for it.
Thank you for clarifying. I'm sorry to intrude on Commissioner time.
Thank you.
Not a problem. Thank you, Steve. Any other questions? Seeing none, thank you very much, Ann.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Last, we have Nathaniel Gale. Is Nathaniel Gale here?
Yes, can you hear me?
Let's hold on one moment and I will start your 5 minutes. Please proceed. Nathaniel.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, great. So first, I just want to give some major props to the 16-year-old who spoke at the beginning of this public hearing. Wow, if they're still listening, I hope that we get to work together someday. Second, I just want to say how cool it is that we are doing this exercise. I just moved back to Hartford after over a decade in California, and where I lived, we did not have a regular re-looking at the charter. So that's so cool. It is an awesome responsibility, and I thank you all for doing it. It's super exciting. I just have three things that I think are worth exploring. I guess before I say my three things, I wanted to kind of like upvote the comment earlier about the staggered elections. I thought that's a really good point, staggered elections. And then there's a comment about like at-large and district combo. I think that's interesting. And because it relates to some of my points that I was thinking about in preparing for this too. So one is nonpartisan elections. Where I lived in California, the elections were nonpartisan. So you just have, the primary and the runoff, and the primary, it's just the top two vote getters, then make it to the runoff. No parties, which I think works well. I also would love to see Hartford explore ranked choice voting, where you rank your choice for that seat in 1, 2, and 3, or however many. I know that there are a couple places that do that. San Francisco is the first one that comes to mind. I think there are a few other that recently did it. So I think that's worth exploring. And then third, in Los Angeles, where I used to live, I worked for the Los Angeles Department of Transportation. And so I think the city of Hartford should explore creating a transportation department, because when I worked in the LA DOT, we got a lot of federal money. There's a federal US Department of Transportation that would go directly to the city and the people of Los Angeles, just because we had a transportation department. There's formula funds. So, and that's like one of, I think, many examples as to why, that would be a good department and interesting thing to explore. Oh, and I forgot to introduce myself. I'm sorry. My name is Nathaniel Gale. I live at 160 Kenyon, and I'm here representing myself, just myself, as a citizen of Hartford. So thank you all. Really, really cool. Really excited to be following this process.
Thank you, Nathaniel. We have questions for Nathaniel. Seeing none, thank you again for coming out tonight. Do we have any other members of the public who we did not call on tonight that would wish to address the commission? I'll ask one more time. Do we have any other members? I see someone, WD. David, do we know who that is?
Those are just the folks that are on the call. I was giving them an opportunity to say if they wanted to speak.
Okay. All right. I think that concludes our public hearing portion of the meeting. Thank you again to everyone who came out tonight. We have a lot of work. There were a lot of great ideas, and we really appreciate all of the engagement. Any follow-up materials, please send them to David Grant so we can start considering those. And so now we'll move on to the final portion of the evening, the commissioner comments and questions. And before we open up the floor to the rest of the commission, I'd like to pose a couple of questions to our counsel, Steve Mednick, regarding our next steps for the commission. So first, Steve, could you provide a brief overview of the redlining process that we'll be undertaking at our next meeting?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It was a great hearing and a lot of good ideas. The redlining process, what we're going to do, and I've asked the Corporation Counsel and Deputy Corporation Counsel if somebody from that office would be available. What we're going to try to do is run through the document. We're going to walk through the charter chapter by chapter, from the preamble to the back of the document. We're probably not going to do the special acts because we're dealing with that separately, to kind of walk through the document, see what's there, see if there are things that strike us as we walk through the document that raise the question, why is this here? Is this a necessary item? If the Corporation Counsel or somebody from that office is with us, my hope is that they will tell us, we've had a problem with this section. This section is problematic. It prevents us from doing X, Y, or Z. If we had something like this, it might be helpful. So the idea is to really get to know the geography of the document, basically. We should be able to go through it in one session. We're not going to do a line by line. So red line is what I call it, but we're not literally going to go line by line and Xing things out. We're going to go section by section to see what's there. Give you an example. I mean, why is there a section in the charter? This is a question we'll probably ask ourselves next week regarding liens for work performed by the city. Does anybody use that provision? Are there statutes that we utilize to deal with liens for work performed by the city? Is it a special act and a unique power, and therefore we should have it? We leave it. So those are the kinds of questions we will look at. We'll see the structure of the body. We're going to see the structure of elections. And I want to point out something that we can talk about when we go through Redline, but a lot of the ideas that came up, several of the ideas that came up about nonpartisan election, ranked choice voting, those are all Title IX issues that we have no jurisdiction over whatsoever. Districts at large, we do have jurisdiction over. Composition of the Board of Education, composition of the council, we have jurisdiction over. And we'll see what those bodies look like as we go through the document next week. I find it to be a really useful exercise. And if it's not useful, it'll be good for those of you who are having insomnia problems. You'll make up for lost time. I'm hoping that you will enjoy going through that process. We flipped it around, and 2 weeks later, Mr. Chairman, we'll probably have the mayor and other elected officials come in and give us their point of view on the items that should be in the charter. I think the second issue that you wanted me to talk about, Mr. Chairman, with the meeting.
Go ahead. Yep.
As you may know, the governor today, just today, he had to do it today because today was the deadline, extended the executive orders for remote meetings and hybrid meetings through June 30th. So we are getting to the end of this Brady Bunch approach that we have to public meetings where we all see each other on a screen, and we'll be getting back to live meetings in July. I can't tell you exactly how that will be. If we go back to the regular order that was pre-pandemic, I could tell you what it would be, and so would David, in terms of how you notice a meeting and where you can hold a meeting and all that. But the legislature is currently looking at 3 or 4 bills that will try to institute some form of hybrid meeting as kind of a permanent aspect of our society. So part of many meetings may still continue to be online, to be electronic. But technically on July 1, this regime will be over with regard to fully electronic meetings. And the other issue that has been raised by the chair, and I think it's a great concept, and I know Hartford commissions have done it in the past, and a lot of my commissions throughout the state have done it in the past. The chair has talked about the possibility of moving the commission around town into different neighborhoods, different locations, to have meetings and hearings on various subjects around the city. That is perfectly permissible. I think we'd have to talk to David and figure out how that works with broadcasting these activities and making sure that we have electronic hookups if there is a law that permits the hybrid meetings to continue.
I just want to give props. That last thought was actually Commissioner Rubenstein's idea, so I want to give credit where credit is due. So thank you, Commissioner Rubenstein, for that suggestion.
You're welcome.
Any questions on any of those 3 topics that that Steve just touched on?
I have a question.
Sure, Commissioner Gallen-Clark.
So Blue Hills neighborhood has probably the largest amount of seniors living in it in the city. And one of the gentlemen who was supposed to be on tonight, he was having technical difficulties. And so they've asked, is there any way that there could be a meeting during the day? They say a lot of them go to sleep, you know, they're in bed by now. And so they're wondering, is there any way that there could be at least one convening during the day?
I don't see why not as chair. There may be attendance issues. And so, I just want to make sure that, everyone is aware of that there may be folks that are unable to attend because of work issues. So let's not hold that against them. But if we can put something together, I don't see any issue with that. Does anyone else have any thoughts on that?
If I may, that may be one of the best. We had this issue with the bank that I serve on. We try to start our meetings at sometimes 4:30. It's actually worked a little bit better to do that with the Zoom application. People have been able to be on time for that meeting. I think there may be an opportunity there to, depending on the rule changes that council was discussing with.
Commissioner Kennedy, I think we lost you. But I think Commissioner Gallen-Clark, Commissioner Kennedy, you back?
Sorry for my Wi-Fi. Apparently my internet connection is unstable. But I think with the potential changes in state law, there may be an opportunity to do that so that we can involve as many citizens as possible. I think one of the things we heard this evening was citizen engagement, that we've been losing that in Hartford, and we should do everything we could to encourage our citizenry to participate in this process, because this is their government. This is going to be their constitution for their local officials.
I agree.
Mr.
Medic?
Yeah, one of the other things that we've done is sometimes you could have a Saturday session. You might find people available on Saturdays. You may also break into subcommittees. So you might have a subcommittee that is available of 3 or 4 people that are available during an afternoon to go to a senior center and elicit information. So you could probably break up into different groups for fact-finding purposes that really, really kind of magnify the effect of the body. And so I just want to let you know, I think those do. You have to notice those meetings. You have to let the world know that those meetings are taking place. They can't be private, so that wherever you're visiting would need to know that the meeting is a public meeting. So all those things would need to be worked out. But there are a lot of innovative ways to break up the group and get out into the community.
I had a follow-up question as well.
Sure, go ahead.
The 16-year-old individual who came on, I think is Naya, I believe is the name. She mentioned something I thought that was very timely. She said that there needs to be informational sessions around the city regarding what the city charter is really about, really doing an education awareness. And I think she's echoing what quite a few people that I've talked to since my appointment, they're echoing the same thing. They have the same sentiments. Is there any consideration for something like that?
Sure. Any ideas? Let's brainstorm. Why don't we put together a small group offline to discuss both of those topics, and anyone else that's interested on the commission will send around an email, and we can have a session to figure out what would be how to do that effectively.
Thank you.
Any other questions from commissioners on Attorney Mednick's discussion thus far?
Thank you, Kamara.
All right, seeing none. 2 more comments. I wanted to first thank the city clerk, Noel McGregor, and Eric Lusa from his team for their efforts to digitize the meeting minutes and draft charters from previous charter revision commissions. So we will be organizing those documents and uploading them to the commission website for everyone's review within the next week. I think you'll find that seeing what prior charter revision commissions have considered and some of the things that, some of the questions that they asked as they were debating issues is going to be helpful, because a lot of the same questions and things that have come up tonight have been considered in the past. So it would be good not to start from scratch and to have some historical context there. And then lastly, before we open up the floor for any final questions, I wanted to mention that Commissioner Gallon Clark provided me with a list of former city officials that she'd like to appear before the commission. So I'd suggest that any other commissioners who'd like to have any former city officials provide testimony to the commission to submit their suggestions to David Grant by Monday, May 24th, so we can begin to figure out how best to bring those individuals before the commission. Okay. Any other questions or comments from the commissioners? Commissioner Kennedy.
Yeah, if I could we, I know we talked about this offline a little bit before the meeting. If we could look at the, what's occurred in Eugene, Oregon and Springfield, Oregon, where they've actually made some police department reforms in terms of having a group outside the department, social workers, other folks, etc. I guess they had 4 or 5 vans that actually respond to calls that are into the police department, and then the police department sends those folks out. They estimate they've saved about, according to this article, about 8.5 million a year. And they're just direct budget costs as opposed to others. I just like to take a look at that. I know someone also had mentioned the city of Hamden had done a great deal of reform with their police departments and their charter. Just for things for discussion as we move forward.
Well, Steve, I know you'll have the Hamden information handy, and we will look into putting together the Eugene information as well.
Yeah, I'll be happy to do that. More likely what we should probably wait for, but I have a huge, as Mel Medina knows, I have a huge file on police reform that I've been compiling for the last 2 years. Eugene is not there, so I'll make sure I add Eugene. But I think if we could hold off until the commission starts prioritizing before we start giving assignments, it will be more efficient. I would guess that police will be an issue.
Okay, that's fine. I just wanted to bring it up. Yeah. I wasn't.
No, I think it's a great idea, and I will do that. But just in general, let's get through this due diligence. Then we'll draw up the priority list so that you utilize me in the most cost-effective way possible.
Understood, Council.
Right.
All right. Thank you, Commissioner Kennedy. Any other questions or comments? Okay. Seeing none, without objection, we will stand adjourned at 8:22. Thank you, everyone. Have a good night.